motorsport sectors, and the stadium that he talks about is a historic motorsport venue, and whilst it's been a shame to see it fall into disrepair, I hope that the decision he refers to enables a possibility of both speedway and stock car racing to return, and I know that my honourable friend will rightly continue to champion this cause.
SNP Leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, when the Tories scrapped the cap on bankers' bonuses in the autumn during a cost of living crisis, the Labour Party rightly opposed it. Yet here we are, just 3 months later, and the Labour Party support scrapping the cap on bankers' bonuses. Shameful. But is the Prime Minister comforted by the fact that he's now no longer alone in this House on being completely out of touch with public opinion?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said at the time, we supported the decision of the independent regulator because this was the right thing for financial stability. But that, Mr. Speaker, is because on this side of the House, we have a set of convictions and we have a plan and we stick to it. But he's absolutely right to point out the flip-flopping and U-turning and no convictions of the party opposite.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, scrapping the cap on bankers' bonuses was only made possible due to Brexit. So what the Westminster parties are now telling the public is that it's OK for bankers to have unlimited Brexit bonuses, but for the public sitting at home, struggling to feed their families, they have to suck up and deal with the additional food price cost as a result of Brexit red tape. That is the cost, and that is the reality of broken Brexit Britain. Isn't it the case that the great achievement of this Tory government is getting the Labour Party to agree to that bleak future?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we're actually delivering benefits for people across Scotland, not just least in new free trade deals that are opening up markets for Scottish exporters, free ports that are attracting jobs and investment, the Brexit pubs guarantee, cutting the cost of a pint in Scottish pubs. But when he talks about the cost of living, Mr. Speaker, the thing that he could do most to help is make sure that Scotland isn't the highest tax part of the United Kingdom. And it's not just for high earners, Mr. Speaker. Everybody earning £28,500 or more is paying more tax in Scotland than they would in England, thanks to the SNP.
Diego Davison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One punch thrown, 2 days on life support, then 3 children left without a father. A 4-year sentence handed down, released after 2, but one grieving mother has to live a life sentence of agony. Sentencing for one-punch killers is not working in this country. Does the Prime Minister agree that now is the time to finally introduce a specific offence and a tougher minimum sentence for one-punch manslaughter?
Prime Minister.
Can I pay tribute to the work my honourable friend has done in bringing attention to so-called one-punch manslaughter and highlighting, as she knows well, the anguish those cases cause for the families of the victims. And I know the Ministry of Justice has looked very carefully at the amendment that my honourable friend has proposed, and I know that she'll be meeting the Minister for Safeguarding shortly to both discuss her specific amendment and how we might best address the wider issue.
Sir Ed Davey.
Speaker.
Order. Ed Davey.
My constituent Millie, a wheelchair user, had a serious accident at a sporting event. Millie was left waiting on the floor in pain for over 2 hours before an ambulance arrived. During her months in hospital since, she's been dropped badly multiple times, left stuck in her bed for days at length. She's even been told to soil herself when there's no one to take her to the toilet. Before all this, Millie was living independently and working, but the prospect of her returning to work is being destroyed by the crisis in the NHS and care system. I'm sure the Prime Minister will agree that no one should ever have to go through what Millie has, so will he look again at our proposals to make sure every patient gets the high-quality care they need?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm very sorry to hear about Millie's case, and if there are specific aspects of it that need to be examined, I'm sure the Health Secretary will follow up with the honourable gentleman. And more generally, we want to make sure everyone gets the care they deserve, which is why we're not just investing record sums in the NHS, but ensuring that there are record numbers of doctors, nurses, and new innovative forms of treatment like surgical hubs and virtual wards, all of which is showing that ambulance times that he mentioned are lower today than they were this time last year.
Lynn Saxby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The number one reason for children's hospital admissions in North Devon is for dental treatment. We have no NHS capacity and no orthodontist in Barnstable. Our dentists cannot recruit, even with large golden hellos. The emergency dental plan does seem to have been stuck at the Treasury forever. My right honourable friend uses spare set of keys and pop round and rescue it for us, please. My constituents and I would be ever so grateful.
Prime Minister.
My honourable friend has rightly championed the provision of dentistry in her local area. We're investing £3 billion a year, and the reformed contracts in dentistry from the NHS have improved access while ensuring fairer remuneration for dentists, and we're also providing more financial support for those who need it the most. So around half of the course of treatment last year were delivered to those who are non-paying, both adults and children. But yes, more needs to be done, and that's why our dentistry recovery plan will be published shortly.
Andrew Bridgen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. More than 2 decades ago, the then Prime Minister Tony Blair misled this House by promoting and endorsing the Post Office Horizon IT system as perfect, protecting the large corporation that created it and causing untold harm and damage and misery to innocent people. Can the current Prime Minister think of anything he has promoted in partnership with huge businesses as safe and effective, which has ultimately harmed the British people? And will he use this opportunity to correct that safe and effective statement, or will he choose the same line as Tony Blair, sit back, do nothing, and let the misery just continue to pile up?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as we've been clear, the Horizon scandal is a terrible miscarriage of justice, and we're doing everything that we can to make it right. To what he was more broadly insinuating, let me be unequivocal from this dispatch box that COVID vaccines are safe, Mr. Speaker.
Jill Gideon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The shocking revelations of the Horizon scandal highlighted the Post Office's financial incompetence, and my right honourable friend will know that the public's confidence in the institution is at an all-time low. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that, as high street banks are closing branches across the country, we should look to developing new community banking solutions rather than giving the Post Office sole responsibility for providing access to cash and other banking services in poorly served neighbourhoods?
Prime Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for a question, but I also just say that we shouldn't mistake conflating this scandal with the actions of many hard-working local postmasters and sub-postmasters, because customers can access cash and banking services through a wide range of channels, including a contract with the Post Office counter service, which does provide a valuable channel. And that I agree with her, though, the importance of access to cash, which is why the government has legislated to protect that as part of the recent Financial Services and Markets Act, and ensures that the vast majority of people should be no more than 3 miles away from such a cash point.
John Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, one of the Nolan principles, integrity, states that holders of public office should not act to gain material benefits for themselves, their family or their friends. Prime Minister, on the 6th of January, you tweeted a link to the Conservative Party website which seemed to scrape people's data and place unwanted cookies on their machines. The Good Law Project is now pursuing. Can the Prime Minister assure the House that no laws have been broken by his party?
Yes. Mr. Speaker, of course our party follows all laws.
Robert Jenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, a first responsibility for government is to fix the housing crisis that young people didn't cause. 3 years ago, we dragged house building in this country up to the highest level since 1987, after the last Labour government left it at its lowest level since the 1920s. But house building is weakening. We need to do more. Will my right honourable friend consider using the budget to do as he and I did together during the pandemic and cut stamp duty to boost housing starts, to reignite the economy and to support thousands of businesses across our country.
Prime Minister.
Well, my right honourable friend is right to point out that since 2010 we have delivered 2.5 million additional homes, on track to deliver 1 million just in this Parliament, and help over 850,000 families into home ownership through schemes such as Help to Buy and Right to Buy. Obviously, tax decisions are a matter for the Chancellor, but I would point out that our existing stamp duty relief for first-time buyers ensures the vast majority of first-time buyers in our country pay absolutely no stamp duty.
Motion to Cordova.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The APPG on eye health and visual impairment has today published polling that found that nearly half of employers exclude blind and partially sighted people from their workplaces, and 1 in 4 said that they would not be willing to make workplace adjustments. The disability employment gap remains stubbornly at 30%, and the pay gap means that blind and partially sighted people effectively work for free for 47 days of the year. So will the Prime Minister meet with me and sight loss organisations to discuss how we can create a more inclusive workforce?
Prime Minister.
Well, I share the honourable lady's ambition to have an inclusive workforce, and the record in supporting those with disabilities into work over the past several years has been incredibly strong. I know this is something that the Work and Pension Secretary is actively looking at and making sure that our accessibility plan is up to date and inclusive, and I'll ensure that she gets a meeting with the relevant minister.
Sir Keir.
Mr. Speaker, having visited recently, I know that Israel remains in shock following the rape, murder and butchery of Hamas. All of us want to see a peaceful and demilitarised Palestinian state. However, Hamas remain in control in large parts of Gaza. Their support is growing in the West Bank. Nearly 2/3 of Palestinians in polling reject coexistence with Israel, and the Palestinian Authority has continued to promote hatred of Jews. Does my right honourable friend agree that any recognition of a Palestinian state must address these issues and can only come about as part of a negotiated settlement between Israel and the Palestinians?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government's position is clear. My honourable friend is right that there are steps and conditions that need to be put in place on this journey. First and foremost, the removal of Hamas from Gaza, a Palestinian-led government in Gaza and the West Bank, a concrete plan to reform and support the Palestinian Authority, a reconstruction plan for Gaza, and a two-state solution which we have long supported. So let me be clear, we stand with Israel, and the terrorist threat that they face must be limited, and Israel's lasting security must be guaranteed.
Neil Lambert.
Mr. Speaker, on the 15th of November last year, I appealed to the Prime Minister to choose de-escalation and peace over violence, death and destruction. He called me naive. So far, over 26,000 souls have perished in Gaza. Shameful. In a powerful and moving open letter in Monday's New York Times, the Jewish Voice for Peace Rabbinical Council cited Deuteronomy. I have put before you life and death, blessing and curse. Choose life, accusing President Biden of choosing death. If the Prime Minister won't listen to me or the ICJ, will he listen to the Rabbinical Council, or will he call them naive too?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've been clear multiple times that we are concerned, deeply concerned, about the impact of the fighting in Gaza on the civilian population. Too many people have lost their lives, and there is a desperate need for increased humanitarian support in Gaza. I won't go over all the debates we've had about the conditions that are necessary for an immediate pause leading to a sustainable ceasefire, but I can assure the House that we are doing everything that we can to get more aid into the region as quickly as possible.
Kelly Tolhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chatham Docks supports over 800 local high-value jobs which are at risk as the owners are continuing in their pursuit to displace successful businesses such as ArcelorMittal Kent Wire. The Labour Council are failing to honour the commitment they made before the local elections to protect the docks and the jobs. Even their leader, the Right Honourable Member for Holborn and St Pancras, said he was proudly backing Save Chatham Docks campaign. Will my Right Honourable friend meet with me to see how we can protect the docks and save those jobs for my constituents? And isn't this just another example of how Labour and their leaders change their position depending on which way the wind blows?
Mr. Speaker, my honourable friend has been a constant champion of Chatham Docks, and I am disappointed to hear that the local Labour Council are failing to honour the commitments that they've made. But also, she points out, I'm not surprised to see that the Leader of the Opposition has said one thing and then consequently done another. The Docs support hundreds of jobs, and I join with her in calling on the Council to rethink their approach.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. We now come to the statements. Minister Letson.
Mr. Speaker, with permission, I would like to make a statement on the launch of our Pharmacy First service. Pharmacies